What is tuberculosis? How common is tuberculosis, and what are the signs and symptoms of tuberculosis? And do most patients with tuberculosis have symptoms? Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Dr. Musam Tombeni. Signing with us today is Tsepo Maseko, and the feeder interpreter is Sarah Klaas. On Vital Signs, we'll focus on tuberculosis, more commonly known as TB. World TB Day is observed on the 24th of March each year to raise public awareness about one of the world's deadliest infectious killers. TB is preventable and treatable, and the theme this year is Yes, We Can End TB. Coming up on the program, we'll speak to the founder of Living with Hope. She was diagnosed with MDR-TB, and she shares her journey with us. To also speak to Pulmonologist about TB and multi-drug resistant TB. We'll speak to General Secretary of the Treatment Action Campaign about issues affecting those who are battling with TB. And lastly, we'll speak to the head of the National TB Program from the National Department of Health about what's driving the TB epidemic in South Africa and the challenges that the health department faces. Remember that you can be part of the show today by asking the guests that we'll have on any question that you have on your mind. Simply share your view with us on what we're discussing. The number to call is 011-714-0677, 011-714-0678. Also on your social media on Twitter at SABC Vital Signs and Facebook SABC Vital Signs. The show continues right after this ad break. Stay with us. Lena Vital Signs, and namhlanje sikhuluma ngayo i-TB. A founder of Living with Hope, Ophelia Honey Stevenson, was diagnosed with MDR-TB around 2012 due to weak lungs and was later then diagnosed with HIV. Ophelia aims to ensure that patients live a healthy lifestyle and inspire young people living with HIV and survivors of chronic illnesses to fight for their health. To join us now, and of course, to talk about her journey. Good day, Ophelia. Hi, how are you?
Good morning, Dr. Musa and the viewers at home. I am blessed. How are you?
Well, thank you. So let's start off by talking about this journey that you've had with TB. Take us through the time that you got your diagnosis.
Well, the first time when I was diagnosed with TB, I had lack of knowledge around what TB was. But I could remember the journey that my mom used to be in. And I think that's what gave me the strength, to say when someone coughs, this is what you're not supposed to do. Once you start having that nice sweat and all of that, I would remember what my mom used to do, because I would like to believe that my mom also had TB. And later on this stage, they found out that it was a weak lung. So meaning I was born with a weak lung. And by then, we don't understand where the TB came from. As I was admitted, like times and times again, I would be admitted, the TB would not subside. And when the other doctor then decided, you know what, we're going to take you to Bara and so that you can see the specialist. When I got to Bara, the specialist then said, no, they confirmed that I had a weak lung. So it needed to be flushed so that I could stop coughing a lot. And that now led to the MDR unit. So after taking the MDR medication, that's when I started feeling much better.
So what did you know? What did you know about MDR? Or let's not even go that far and talk about the multi-drug resistant one. Just TB in general. Before you get this diagnosis, what was your knowledge of TB?
I didn't have knowledge, and I think that's what makes a lot of people become not compliant to TB, because we don't have a lot of knowledge. The only knowledge we get is you are now diagnosed, and then after being diagnosed, you are told when you are at home, open the windows. So that's it. And how, the fundamentals of not taking treatment, not being compliant, the food you're supposed to eat, how you have to carry yourself nutritiously. Those are the things that's the lack of knowledge that we have. And hence we are unable to actually take care of what the bacteria requests from us to do.
Now, I'm sure living with TB at that time was very difficult. I mean, not just the diagnosis in itself, but the actual physical diagnosis that comes with it. You being ill, you being someone that has to be looked after. How were you impacted by having MDR-TB?
I felt like I could die because I had kids at the time, and having to be taken care of by your daughters is not it's not what anyone wants to do, and or a mother's dream to let her children see such things. And it became worse. It became worse even at the just before the MDR. So I actually got cured or recovered strength after the MDR, but then it led to the home oxygen because my lung was now kaput. And having to force on to be a mother, having to force on to be this strong person for your kids with the diagnosis of HIV, it really destroyed me emotionally, actually. So it was a bad impact for myself. It took time for me to recover.
And when you look back now and think about the support you received at the time from family, from your children and all of that, do you think it's important to have a support structure in order for people to continue to take their medication, for instance, and continue to be able to go for follow-ups and things such as that?
That's a core need. It's a core need to an extent to say, even right now when we go to clinics, I usually even plead with the health workers to say, sometimes when I come here and maybe you having a bad day, I'm also having a bad day, but try walk a mile in my shoe to think that what is it that I'm carrying. I'm not saying it's your fault that I'm TB or I'm diagnosed with TB or I've got all these other chronic illnesses. But what we need is that encouragement to say, hey, you're doing great. Hey, you're gonna get well. Even if you don't understand what's happening, but for the mere fact that I'm at the health facility, it means I need your encouragement to say, try do your best to overcome this or conquer this illness.
Let's talk about treatment now. I think an important part of a TB or an MDR-TB diagnosis is the idea that you're going to be on treatment. So take us through how long you were on treatment and when you started to feel a little bit better, because a lot of the time I think you'd established through your foundations that a lot of people find themselves in the situation where they'd stop treatment because they feel like they're not getting any better. So what's the point of taking it? So how long did you have to take medication before you started feeling better, and how long was the course of treatment you were on?
Besides the TB duration where I was taking TB treatment, I think the one that left an impact was the MDR, because MDR, you take MDR treatment for 2 years. So it means you have to be at the facility for 2 years. And fortunately for me, I was there for about a year. And the unfortunate part, or the sad part, was that we were isolated from our families so that we could not infect our families. And it was quite lonely, not knowing whether, sometimes others would pass away, others would not make it like the way you can see. So it discourages the person to say, what if it's me tomorrow? And with my complications as well, is that 1 minute I'll be okay, and then the next I'm on oxygen. The next, my weight is not okay. So it was very confusing and scary. It was very scary. Because now I had 2 kids at home that I needed to go back to. And someday I just decided, you know what? I don't know where this thing comes from. I don't know how I got it. So I'm not going to nurse around it. I need to learn, and I need to take this treatment the way they're telling me to take it. And most importantly, accept myself to say, I'm going to fight to go back home. And after a year, the doctors, they were pleased with my results. And the culture came clear, and then I could go home.
And what a happy day that must have been. But let's jump back into the discussion about your foundation, Living with Hope. Please tell us what your organization does specifically for those that are living with TB.
Living with hope was also established through that, how I found hope in the midst of not knowing whether I'm going to die today or tomorrow. And I started running programs within the facility. We would play sports, and I tell the patients, what's the point of us sitting in our rooms and thinking about what we don't know, which is tomorrow. I love that Dr. Van Rensburg. And I would go to her office and I would tell her, Doc, you know what, if you could just bring us balls or bring us cards, things that we can keep our minds active with, so that we don't think about treatment time, because the duration is the same. In the morning we take treatment, and then in the afternoon it's lunch, it's treatment, it's weight, all of those things. So we're trying to cut that into saying, while we're waiting for food, let us play games. While we're waiting for food, let's sit around a circle and talk about our lives. I mean, after here, there's life beyond MDR, there's life beyond TB, HIV. And most of us there were TB, MDR-TB infected, and HIV. So, I formed something like a support group within the facility. And I know I used to piss a lot of the sisters off because of, I'll demand so many things from them. And that's where Living with Hope came about. And we all had hope afterwards. We started becoming discharged on as quicker than the doctors would think, because our minds were active now. We were thinking beyond the sickness.
Well, look, it sounds like your organization, of course, does wonderful work, but, that little bit of hope that you leave with someone, giving them hope that one day I will get discharged, that if I continue taking my treatment, that I will get out of here and be able to live a normal, happy life. And I know there's someone watching today, sitting at home, that probably is dealing with the problems of trying to take their treatment and potentially thinking of defaulting, and you being able to tell that story has really helped someone out. So thank you so much for joining us, Ophelia, and good luck for the future. After the break, we'll speak to Dr. Emmanuel Taban, a pulmonologist, about TB and multi-drug resistant TB. Stay with us. Welcome back to Vital Signs. Now, South Africa is still struggling to curb the high incidence rate and increase in TB deaths, and needs to speed up its investment and implementation of new technologies and therapies to eliminate TB as a public health threat. Now, this is according to TB expert Professor Kogi Naidu, the Deputy Director of the Center for AIDS Program of Research in South Africa, CAPRISA. She believes a focused approach can assist the TB recovery plan after the COVID-19 pandemic set back the gains made by a decade. Take a look at this.
The World Health Organization, the WHO, estimates that in 2021, more than 300,000 South Africans fell ill from TB, while 56,000 died from the disease. The latest statistics show that South Africa remains among the top 30 countries in the world with a high TB disease burden. There were, however, positive developments before the COVID-19 pandemic. TB incidence in the country declined between 2015 and 2020. But the drop of 11% is still only half of the 20% target set by the WHO.
What we set out to do was to increase the number of people accessing a TB diagnostic test. We set out to improve the quality of care. We set out to improve overall retention and care and people completing therapy. What we didn't factor was a pandemic that will come and disrupt a strategic plan.
But all is not lost. Naidu says the TB recovery plan has focused on key areas to bring the country back in line with the WHO's End TB strategy.
And we've had to rethink how we implement the program. And the government remains committed. We use the latest evidence within the strategic plan in order for the common person to benefit from all the research that is underway globally. We have the best drugs that are available to treat drug-resistant TB. There's newer regimen coming in to treat drug-sensitive TB, a shorter regimen of 4-month duration. So we do a lot more to enhance the quality of our program.
But the challenges remain. The TB burden is mainly driven by HIV, poor living conditions, and late presentation to health facilities.
The biggest challenge we face is the huge burden of HIV. People living with HIV have a heightened risk of TB disease. If you do not have HIV, your risk of getting TB is 10% for your entire lifetime. But if you're a person living with HIV, your risk for TB is 10% for every year that you live. So the biggest challenge is the TB in people living with HIV. It's a tap that we haven't quite been able to turn off. The complexity of HIV-associated TB is the high mortality.
Studies have shown that tens of thousands of people sick with TB in South Africa are not diagnosed. This 26-year-old TB patient from Umlazi is a volunteer in one of Caprice's research projects in Durban, where there is a high disease burden. He was already very sick before he started treatment.
I started 14 November because I don't feel well, even at work. There's no appetite. Every day if I'm trying to eat, I don't even eat. Yeah.
The Department of Health's Target Universal Testing Strategy, which requires testing people living with HIV, people who had TB and close contacts, is a way to address this. And improving on this approach, described as test and treat, are new guidelines for those among the high-risk group who, when testing negative for TB, are treated with TB preventive therapy.
TB is a disease that cannot kill if it's treated. It's preventable if the patient takes the medication regularly. At first, I was fearful of the disease, but I saw that I can live.
But not all complete their treatments, fueling the country's challenge of multi-drug resistant TB. In this respect, experts say the race is on to develop quick and affordable resistance tests for all commonly used TB drugs. Naidu says there are steps which can be taken to improve the outcomes, and she also supports a community-based approach.
We certainly need far more investments. We need better tools to fight TB. We need effective TB vaccines. The TB preventive therapy shouldn't rely on you taking one more pill every day for a year or 3 months or 1 month. A shot in the arm should be enough to prevent TB for the years to come. So we need more effective preventive strategies, and we need to enhance access to TB diagnostics into the community. People now need to present to a health service to have a symptom suggestive of TB or to be a high-risk contact in order to access a TB diagnostic. But if we identify high-risk groups beyond just those that have symptoms of TB, enhance access to TB diagnostic testing, we will enhance our reach of the TB program into the community, enhance the number of people that we find with TB, and improve TB outcomes and reduce transmission at the same time.
Ongoing clinical trials are evaluating the safety and efficacy of shorter regimens needed to eradicate the disease. Renee Heine, SABC News, Durban.
TB is a contagious infection caused by the bacteria or a type of germ that usually attacks your lungs, spreads very easily and can be deadly. When you have active lung TB and you cough, talk, sneeze or even spit, you emit germs into the air, and anyone who breathes in these germs can become infected. So it's important to know that TB is curable if detected and treated early. And to help us understand TB a little bit better, we're joined by world-famous Dr. Emmanuel Taban, who is a pulmonologist. Thank you so much for joining us, Doc.
Thank you so much, Doc. Thanks for the invitation. Thanks to the viewers out there.
So let's quickly jump into the basics around TB. What are the big things we need to understand about what causes TB, what TB actually is?
I think TB is it's really a bacteria, what we call previous acid-fast bacteria, and it's caused by what we call mycobacteria tuberculosis. And it's a really very treatable conditions. But the problem, as I say, it's easily transmissible. And in South Africa, it's an endemic country. where almost everybody get exposed to TB. But of course, the presentation depending on your underlying immune system, how strong your immune system is. And currently, as we heard Dr. Nadu say, the HIV has been quite a big problem in South Africa, but also other immune problems that contribute also to the burden of TB in the country. But yes, it's treatable, and it's something that's highly prevalent in the community, in the impoverished community, and also in people underlying medical issues. Yeah.
Now, you've highlighted two very important things. One is the issue of endemic TB, and the other one is the issue of immune status and what that actually has to look like. So could you basically break those two down for us so that, we get a better understanding of what TB being endemic to South Africa means?
So what happened that I think actually if you look, almost 80 to 90% of the population will get exposed to TB. And once they get exposed to TB, obviously the TB travels down to your lung, to alveolar. It's a small shape that looks like grapes. And of course, then two things happens. One, your immune system, if you've got a very strong immune system, the body attacks the TB and quarantine it, or what you call lock it up in the prison, and doesn't cause any problems. And people underlying immune system, people HIV, diabetics, cancer, autoimmune disease, on biological treatment, those people, their immune system is weak, is unable to control the TB. And that's the result, you get what we call primary progressive TB. And they present with a symptom of TB immediately. And most of the people can't be diagnosed with TB. However, those that the TB get quarantined with a very strong immune system, the TB remain dominant in their system until such time that their immune system start to get weakened again when they either having severe psychosocial stress, TB, or being on the steroid. I mean, if people on the steroid, by definition, if you take more than 15 milligrams of steroid for 1 month, your risk of TB obviously increases. And also if you're on the treatment for your autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, also the risk of TB increases. Or if you have issue with malnutrition, or you get exposed to a high burden of TB, then probably, again, then the TB become active. And that's really probably what happened to the TB. So probably the time of exposure is important, and also how you progress in your life. So that means the fact that you don't have TB today, you might still have been in contact with TB, but because your immune system is stronger, that's why you're well. So it's TB requires a lot of progressive checkup in your healthcare status in life.
So what does one then need to do in order to establish if they could potentially have TB? What are the signs and symptoms that people need to be aware of, and what should they do if they think that they've got TB?
Yeah, I think most of the signs, most of people who have primary active TB, of course, they will come with cough, night sweat, loss of weight, loss of appetite, which is one of the biggest issues, but loss of weight is and night sweat are more critical. And then, of course, they come, then they need to see a doctor, and then they need to do sputum. But the most important, of course, is the index of suspicions from the doctor's side, because sometimes patients can come with a cough, but then you look at their x-ray, their heart picture will look like pneumonia. And if the doctor doesn't really have insight into diagnosis of TB in the country, then what we'll do, they diagnose these people as pneumonia, and then start patient on the treatment, and sometimes they tend to improve. However, the TB could be missed, and that's really probably the biggest issue that we have in the country, that most of the diagnosis of TB is missed. Instead of actually the doctors having quite a kind of good insight into that, the diagnosis of TB. And that, of course, after those symptoms, then the patient needs to give sputum. The problem with the sputum, the quality is very important. But the problem with the sputum, when you send it for what you call acid bacillia or gene expert. But the problem with that, you need to have about 5 to 10,000 microbacteria organisms for it to become positive. So it means you only diagnose about 60% of it, and 40% get missed. So that means the sputum can come negative. And then what will happen, then you must wait for 6 weeks where it goes to culture, where the number of microbacteria is much less, and then might become positive later. So it means, if a patient now go to the hospital and then they test for TB, then it's negative, they should not go away and say that there's no TB, because sometimes for 6 weeks, the sputum come out positive. But also now we have a lot of other different modality. Of course, most of these patients need x-rays. The x-rays sometimes can show you most TB that are typical can present with the upper lobe cavitation, like loss of volume, and also consolidation of the upper lobe. That's more typical TB, but sometimes can present also as atypical, most of them involve the lower lobe of the lung. And that's what most doctors tend to miss, because it looks like just a pneumonia. And then of course, there are people that obviously have autoimmune problems. And those people, because if they need to be initiated on steroid or biological, so we can do a lot of different tests for them. So what we could do, like in the past, we do what we call tuberculosis skin test, mantos, that we can inoculate some antigen bacteria in the skin. Then we look at the reaction time. And then, but of course, the issue that is not very sensitive. Now we're having 2 new tests, what we call the Ingress, that normally can pick up latent TB. But the problem with that does not actually tell you that you have active TB. But what I want to allude to it currently, I mean, the Lung Institute in Cape Town, which is headed by Dr. Ketan Dida, they're now developing something, what we call ARIS-TB, which is really used to diagnose more active TB or those with the extrapulmonary TB. And I think for me, that become a game changer, But I think for me, it's most of the time always start by knowing. Means we need to educate our patients about signs and symptoms of TB and where to go and get help. And also we have to educate our healthcare professionals that South Africa is a country where TB is endemic, and also having a larger population of people living with HIV and AIDS, and that means those people are more likely to present with TB in one stage of their life. So it means the doctors need to have a high index of suspicions for diagnosis of TB.
Now, Doc, an important thing that we've said today, we've spoken about TB, we've said MDR-TB, there's, XDR-TB, things such as that. What do these terms actually mean?
Yeah, I think number one, that I need to be clear for the people out there. MDR-TB and XDR-TB is a diagnosis of laboratory. It's a laboratory diagnosis. It's never clinical. Okay, so that means it's based on your cultures that tell you whether you're having MDR-TB or XDR-TB. By definition, MDR-TB is a TB that the patients are resistant to 2 of the first-line drugs, with isoniazid and rifampicin. Okay, that's what we call MDR-TB. While XDR-TB, you are allergic. While XDR-TB, you are resistant to the first line, which is rifampicin and isoniazid, plus what we call the fluoroquinolone, and then one of the injectable, which is either amikacin, kanamycin, or which is 2 of them. You're resistant for most of the 3 of them. And if you have that, then we call you XDR-TB. But if you're resistant only for the first, what you call isoniazid and rifampicin, then you have MDR-TB. And the treatment is quite very long. But as I say, it's a laboratory diagnosis. You need to submit sputum. That diagnosis cannot be made just by clinical examining the patient.
Now, what are the timelines that one needs to be aware of should they then get a diagnosis of TB, MDR-TB, or XDR-TB?
I think normally what happened that initially when you have a sputum and the sputum confirms that you have either can tell you whether you're having normal TB or you're having MDR or XDR TB. And of course, those who are diagnosed with the what we call the normal TB, what happened that we normal put them on treatment for 2 months, and after 2 months, then we take out the sputum again and make sure that they clear the TB. However, some of these patients, because lack of information and then stigmata in the community, they end defaulting their treatment. Or you find that they actually don't improve while they're on the TB treatment. They don't get weight, they still have night sweat, they still have a lot of symptoms. And then, of course, then the doctor must have a clinical index of suspicion, and then, of course, need to reset checking the sending sputum and looking for the XDR-TB or MDR-TB normally. That's how we normally really proceed with that. But the clinically patient need to know. Normally, they must improve actually within 2 weeks to 4 weeks. You find that they start eating a lot, picking up weight, they decrease in night sweats, and appetite also improve. And all those must be related to the clinical improvement.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Doc, and really opening up this discussion around TB, what it actually means, and sort of the timelines people that do get that diagnosis are looking forward to so that they don't find themselves defaulting. That was Dr. Emmanuel Taban, a pulmonologist. After the break, we'll speak to Anele Iawa, the General Secretary of the Treatment Action Campaign, about the issues affecting those who are battling with TB. Stay with us. Welcome back to Vital Signs. The Treatment Action Campaign assessed the state of TB infection control in a number of clinics across South Africa. Of the 158 facilities assessed, 114 were found to be in a red state. Of course, this means that very poor infection control measures in the area were found. Now, South Africa is still missing thousands of people who have TB. The World Health Organization suggests that 57% of those with TB in South Africa were started on treatment. SA's TB program also took a serious knock during the pandemic, which set global TB control back some 10 years. To help us unpack these issues and, of course, look at other things affecting people living with TB, we're joined by the General Secretary of the Treatment Action Campaign, Anele Yawa. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having us.
So, the numbers are the numbers. We hear that it's 158 clinics that were assessed. We're finding 114 of them are in this red state. What does that actually mean for patients?
So it actually means that patients, more especially people who are living with tuberculosis, are not adequately informed about preventative methods. But also it actually says if one contracts tuberculosis, they are not initiated on treatment in good time. Because one of the things you find out is that when you walk inside the facility, on point of entry, you are not screened for tuberculosis. And then you get inside, the waiting area is overcrowded, and someone is coughing in the waiting area, and that person is not treated with priority in order for them to be removed from the majority of the people. You get inside the facility, early in the morning, windows are closed. It means there is no infection control. You get inside the facility, there are no posters which are educating people about prevention and all what have you. It is against that reason. As TAC, and other progressive movements that we're working with on the ground, one of the things that we're doing, it is around social mobilization and education, where we're making people informed and aware about good practices to prevent TB, but also try to assist people in terms of sending them to the right direction in the event they contract TB, because we believe only informed communities who will be able to take informed decisions about their health as well as their rights.
Now, that's an important thing that the Treatment Action Campaign stands for, this idea that you want patients to be able to take their own health and understanding of health into their own hands. And the only way to do that is to know their rights, have facilities that are there to help them out. And in these 158 facilities that you did monitor, the 114 that did not pass this test naturally exist somewhere in this country. So where did you find these these bad guys, these bad clinics or these facilities that aren't necessarily reaching the standard that you'd want them to?
So we are working in more than 400 clinics in South Africa, in 27 districts of the 52 districts that we have in the country. And we are working with communities, with public healthcare users, and other role players. And it is through our health facility monitoring, as well as engaging with health providers, communities and people living with tuberculosis, where we are able to get this information. And upon receiving this information, we are able to produce reports, and these reports are submitted to duty bearers in the form of facility managers, district chief directors, HODs in the province, and even at national, where we will be like, guys, here is a problem, and intervention needs to be made in order for us to turn around the situation as well as the living conditions of the people of our country.
So some of these challenges that you've highlighted are naturally ones that can be fixed. I mean, these are not impossible tasks that you are asking for. So what sort of solutions did you highlight to all the office bearers and the National Department about the possible solutions that they could potentially put in place to get these issues sorted out?
One of the suggestions that we made, we are saying, let's do to tuberculosis what we did to COVID-19.
Okay.
During COVID-19, there was a political will and a political commitment. And a lot of resources were injected to respond to COVID-19. And we do not see that being done on TB. One is expecting to see a minister coming publicly on tuberculosis and say, look, people of South Africa, according to the World Health Organization report of 2021, about 56,000 people died of TB in South Africa, and about 33,000 of those people are people living with HIV. But also one expects the minister to come publicly and say, as much as we are initiating many people on TB treatment, many people are also defaulting on treatment. How are we making sure that we're working together to find those who are missing and link them back to care? One is also expecting that when you walk inside the facility, like during the time of COVID, even here at SABC, everybody was screened for COVID when they walked in here. We do not see that happening in our clinics. And also, we want more diagnostic tools in order for us as the country to be able to detect those people who have contracted TB. Most of our facilities, they do have gene expert machines, but some of these machines are not functional. Others do not have cartridges and other technical problems. And then you begin to ask, why did the government or the country invested a lot of money on these machines if they are not going to be utilized adequately? It therefore means it's a waste of state resources. That's why we are saying they must be fixed and be able to serve the purpose they were bought for.
Now, a big issue that you as a treatment action campaign are always advocating for and fighting for is looking after those that have been de-linked from the system and trying to link them back. And a lot of these, especially in the case of TB, are defaulters. From the people that have defaulted, what's the story you get around the issues that led to them defaulting their medication?
There are a number of contributing factors which makes people to default on treatment. One, you are getting your treatment in this facility. You're unemployed, you get a job, you move to another district or another province. It therefore means you will miss your appointment. Upon arrival on the next facility, when you get there to access your treatment, the first thing that you will be asked is a transfer letter. And if you do not have a transfer letter, it therefore means you will be denied services. There are issues of stigma and discrimination which are still a problem, which makes a number of people to default on treatment. There are issues of staff attitude, where some staff are not treating public healthcare users in a nice way. And also there are issues around the long waiting times, where people will wait inside the facility to be assisted for more than 5 hours. And then when you get tired, you decide to go. But also, these are some of the things that we think needs to be addressed, including socio-economic conditions of the people, because majority of the time, the people who contract TB are poor and the marginalized communities who do not have anything to fend for themselves. And then the question will be, how do we expect this person to adhere on TB treatment on an empty stomach? How do we address those underlying issues as well to make sure that it's not a rhetoric when we say we're making sure that no one is left out, but it's we walk the talk.
Be pragmatic about the issue.
Yes.
Well, Mr. Anele, thank you so much for joining us today and highlighting all the issues that you as the TAC have found with respect to TB in the country. And we hope that they take this information and all the reports and all the countless hours that you guys spend putting all this information together, and it is used sufficiently. That was Anele Yawa, the General Secretary of the Treatment Action Campaign. After the break, we will get into more discussions and speak to Professor Norbert Njege, the head of the National TB Program from the National Department of Health, about what's driving the TB epidemic in South Africa and the challenges that the National Department of Health faces. Stay with us. Welcome back to Vital Signs. Now, based on the latest data in the 2022 World TB Report, the World Health Organization says that South Africa is one of the 10 countries with a triple burden of TB, TB HIV, and MDR-TB. The World Health Organization reported that over 300,000 people estimated to have contracted TB in 2021. Over 181,000 of those people were reported to have been initiated on treatment, and that means that about 120,000 people who have active TB or had active TB in 2021 are not on treatment and were therefore capable of spreading TB to others. Now, there are over 6,000 people with drug-resistant TB in 2021, and 56,000 people died due to TB in 2021. To help us understand what's driving this epidemic in South Africa, we are then, of course, joined by the Health Department, and they're here to highlight what is being done by the department. We're joined by Prof. Norbert Njeka, the head of the National TB Program from the National Department of Health. Thank you so much for joining us, Prof. And I think let's get into the pertinent question and answer the big one. Why are we finding it so difficult to get rid of TB?
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. And I'd like to greet all the viewers out there. I'd like to say that when we celebrate the World TB Day, we often quote Robert Koch as someone who announced a discovery on the 24th March 1882. But what we don't often say is that Robert Koch himself, almost 10 years after talking about his discovery, said that we needed the army of welfare centers to deal with TB. So that was the first thing. The TB is more of a social disease than medical condition. Now, Europe beat TB because they attended to social conditions, they improved living conditions before the numbers were big. But we are in a situation where we need to deal with the social determinant, but also the biomedical response must be very strong because the main driver is HIV. If you look at TB cohort in countries, for example, Central Africa, West Africa, you find that the proportion of people living with TB will be like 10%, 7%, 15%. To the most, with us, 60% of our TB patients are people living with HIV. If you look at the MDR-TB, it goes up to 70, 75% sometimes in our cohort. So HIV is the main driver, and we need to control HIV to get benefit, but also measures of control, primary control, are not good enough in public places, in communities, public transportation. Transmission is big because we're not preventing very well. As a result, for example, among our MDR-TB patients, you find that more than 50% are people who have never had any form of tuberculosis before. We used to say MDR is a disease of defaulters, thinking that someone will have to have drug-susceptible TB before defaulting and get MDR-TB. But that's not true because up to 55% and more of our MDR-TB have never had any form of tuberculosis before. As I'm saying, that's strong evidence that transmission is high, and we're not doing very well in terms of preventing transmission in congregate settings and all these other places where people meet in large numbers.
Now, there are important numbers, and I've highlighted some of the numbers that, would be shocking to a lot of people. But as a department, I'm sure there are numbers that you would like to drive either up or down. So what are those important figures that you're looking to reach in terms of goals for TB?
So what we want to do is to end TB. That's why the theme of this year has been, yes, we can end TB. Now, how do we end TB? We're going to do three key things. Number one, come up with interventions to bring down TB incidence. We know that approximately 304,000 people have active TB every year in South Africa. Like 2021, that was the number. Now, if we are to bring it down by, let's say, 90%, if we have like 30,000 a year, it's going to be good. But it will take a lot of effort. We need to find these people. Last year, we only found 218 that we put on treatment, 218,000 out of 300,000. So one would say, yes, but you haven't done a big job. But during COVID in 2020, we came down to just 160,000. So we are recovering, moving from 160,000 out of 328 in 2020. We moved to 218,000 out of 300. Next year, we want to do more tests and find more. So the more we find, the more we link them to treatment, then we're able to cut the chain of transmission. That's how we can bring down the incidence. Number two, a lot of our people die from TB, and we're saying nobody should die from TB. Again, one has to look at the social determinant. It's about poverty, but also about clinical care. We want to shorten treatment regimens so that they could stay and not be lost to follow-up. We used to say defaulter, but civil society want to kill us. They say they're not defaulters, they are lost to follow-up, which is a big problem. So if we support them, things like nutrition, and give them shorter regimen, we believe they will stay in care, and we want to bring mortality to zero. Number three, 56% of patients, TB patients in South Africa, suffer catastrophic costs. They use more than 20% of their monthly income on money they spend because of the disease. So that is also contributory. So those are the three key things that we want to ensure. Make sure incidents come down, make sure nobody dies from TB through multiple interventions, but also make sure nobody really suffers catastrophic costs because of the disease, because then they would compromise their own family and they may not make it in the process.
Well, Prof, thank you so much for joining us and highlighting the department's strategy with respect to the plans and the things that they would like to see done in order to get to what we're saying this year's theme is for TB month, for TB Awareness Month, which is, yes, we can end TB. And I think it's important for people to be aware of, the things that the department is doing, but also take their own health into their own hands and do what they need to do. Treat everyone that's coughing with that little bit of suspicion that this could be TB. So let's try support them. Let's try get them investigated and, of course, get treated in the same light. Thank you so much, Prof, for joining us. And, of course, that was us highlighting
the
idea. Yes, we can end TB. Sorry about that, Prof. And that's how we wrap up the show, as well as wrap up the season. It's been a great couple of years watching and being on the show with you guys, highlighting all the important things that we wanted to highlight to you in terms of your health, the important things that you need to know about all these different conditions and looking after yourselves and making sure that your health is a priority and is always 100%. As we look forward to another season at some point in time, good luck to you. And, of course, go out there and spread the message of good health and not spread anything else. From me, Dr. Musa Mtomeni and the Vital Signs team, thank you and goodbye.